Hi guys, it's Kate Shale from The Nocturnal. So I'm going to be speaking to Divine Joy Randolph. She is currently starring in the film Last Shift. It's a comedy showing in select theaters. She plays a fast food manager alongside Richard Jenkins and Shane Paul McGee.
Oh, who is divine? I think I am a chill yet driven person who very much so is aware of my position as a businesswoman, as a woman, as a Black woman, and that I'm focused and driven to making it count and making it matter. I'm super silly and all those things too. But yeah, that's a tough one.
And you grew up in Philly?
Yeah, it did.
Tell
Yeah.
me about what that was like. You know, there's a lot of talent that comes out of Philly. There's a lot of arts going on. Like, what was that scene like? How'd you get
Mhm.
exposed?
Yeah. So what was dope about it was that was just the norm. Arts was just the norm. Everybody on your block, the joke was, but it was real, that there was two recording artists, if you would, or studios, producers, music producers on every block, one on one end of the block and one on the other end of the block. So depending on what side of the block you was on. You know what I mean? And so that being said, everyone was just so creative, are so creative, and it was very much so a thing to be either a rapper or a recording artist. And the arts was just something. Gratefully, even being in public school system where the arts was important. And you have those famous performing arts schools like the ones that Boys to Men went to and stuff like that. So you have the art museums. And I remember as a little girl, just not even the art museums, all the museums, the Natural History Museum. So it's a lot of culture. So I grew up with an understanding of Philly is dope. And also there's things outside of Philly. You know what I mean? Like through the libraries and the museums and the music, all the culture, the food, there was very much so an understanding of like there's something beyond this. But it allowed me to appreciate it because it began to be the scope to show me something else. Does that make sense? It wasn't like sometimes it's like, I gotta get out of here. That it was like, it's dope here. I mean, it has its things, but culturally, like it's dope here. And yet it's making me aware that there is something beyond the city limits. But the people are dope, and just the sense of love for Black culture and a Black woman, and how when guys holler at you, they're like my Nubian princess or my queen. You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, yo, shorty in the leopard print, whatever. But it's like, so I had always grown up in a sense of environment of like, I was like, oh, Black is beautiful, and like arts and culture. And I always knew people like, now is the era, I feel like even more so with um, these recent two generations of like entrepreneurship, you know what I mean, and having your own businesses. But that was the norm, you know what I mean, where everybody. I had a next door neighbor who sold water ice outside of the trunk of his car, like, but we wasn't friends because we was like, do you got it? You know what I mean? Like, it was good water ice. And that's, like, because they would have the trucks, but then he was like, I'm gonna be for real mobile. It's gonna be in the back of my trunk. So I was always driven to, my parents always ingrained in me, thank God they weren't stage parents. Not to say that's bad, but I just didn't have that experience. But what was dope was that, they were like, whatever it is that you want to do, because I didn't know. And that was the cool thing. Like, there was so, because of Philadelphia being what it is, it was so much stuff available to me that I didn't know. Like, I didn't bite. Like, acting was the last thing on my list. So there were so many things. I thought, I was going to be a newscaster, a journalist, or a chef, or a lawyer. There were so many things because it was all available to me. But they just was like, whatever you do, make it be the best of whatever it is. Get that education, and that's really what's going to set you apart. But the dope part is that I went to predominantly all white prep schools because my mom's actually both of my parents are educators, so education was very important. So I was the quota wherever I went for my education. But what was fly about it is that we still lived in the neighborhood that we lived in. You feel me? So I would be bused to the suburbs, you know what I mean? Or like, the affluent neighborhoods. And I remember at an early age, my parents being very clear with me of like, this is cool over here, and this is what gets you what you need to get. But don't ever, ever, never turn your back on or forget where you've come from and your community, because it's because of them that you're able, you know what I mean, to get where you need to go. As many neighbors that would, because my mom taught kindergarten, so she would have to leave earlier for work. And so all the neighbors that I would go to their house and like sit at their front window, you know what I mean, waiting for my car to come or the bus to come. And you know what I mean? Like so many people, just small things. People be picking me up from school or donating for this fundraiser or that or that. So you can't have a front on your community because uh, that's what helps you get there. And it was always ingrained in me that then what you do learn, you then bring it back and give it to your community. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful to have grown up in a city like Philadelphia, for sure.
And then, so what has it been like, leaving Philly, going to places like Hollywood and New York, where the
Mhm.
culture's so different?
Um, you know, so being that my mom is an educator, she only wanted the best. So I never stayed at a school longer than 2 years. Some schools, it was like, oh, weirdly enough, they were closing. You know what I mean? But up until college and graduate school, I was there for 3 years. And that was the longest I had ever been in an institution. So, with that being said, I do have an Army brat kid mentality, you know what I mean, of like adjusting and being able to adapt. To be honest, I'm a city person at heart. So cities, though they're similar or though they're different, they're pretty much similar. I was joking. My mom was like, "You're so nomadic. Like, you never really lay roots or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, you did that. It's part of my personality now." But I think every city has its own things. The reason for me was to go to these different places was for the opportunities. So I went to New York first, coming from a theater graduate school background. I was like, okay, well, I guess that makes the most sense because I was so terrified that I wouldn't be able to translate in TV and film. And that was just me not knowing, because they'll tell you like, oh, it's so different. And it's not really. The best secret I can give you for actors in theater who want to transition into TV and film, acting style wise, is that all you have to do is imagine that the camera is your scene partner. So that way, you will naturally adjust, right? Your energy, your interaction. You're not yelling. You're not like, gesticulating, all big gestures. If I'm talking to you right here, this is the proper level. This is the, you know what I mean? The range. And I think that's it. And people just, I mean, God love it. People got classes and all that stuff, transitioning from theater to, it's not that deep. It's really not. Like, just adjust. And so I think the more you're able to adjust just to life in general, and at the same time being true and authentic to yourself, you're golden. And you will surprise yourself where it's been very interesting in my life where I've seen the places where I've ended up, which I never would have thought, you know what I mean, I would have been in or imagined. And sometimes you got to let God or your higher power dream the bigger dream for you, you know, because we can easily get comfortable. And I hope in COVID, in, you know, all of this that's going on with the quarantine, that people are allowing themselves to still dream, to still be, if not before, be more creative than you ever been, because you really don't have no excuse. Like, what else are you doing in the house? Because you done already cleaned your house several times, redecorated. You already called grandma, whoever. Like, you get to work. You know what I mean? Like, so as artists, what is it that you want to create now and do now? And just to, this is a really great time to really be introspective into what it is you want to do, and then be open to where it will take you. And so that way you have no limits whatsoever.
And so tell me the moment you realized that you wanted to get into acting.
I got kicked out of opera school. It wasn't no, and then I knew. No, I got kicked out of opera school. I went to Temple University, and I. That's what I mean about like the course of life. I became an opera singer because on a dare that I was like, oh well, I don't know, and it was because I'm very competitive, and so uh, I had ended up going to Temple for classical voice, and a series of events had happened. And you know, a lot of times they don't, and it's not all that unique to me, I've heard this before, when programs don't have uh, when they don't have like a music, now they do a musical theater program, you know what I mean? So when it's like a theater department and a music department, sometimes one or the other, often they'll butt heads. And I get it in theory, I guess, that they're concerned or worried that they're going to lose students from one to the other. We were doing an opera at the time, and I really wasn't trying to be an actor. No way, no how. But that I was like, you know, because I want my family and my community to be able to understand this old art, right? Like, same thing of Shakespeare. I had to know what I was talking about in order to be able to convey it, so that when my family came and saw it, they could appreciate it instead of being like, ooh, opera, you know what I mean? And so I worked with one of the teachers in the acting department, and the voice department, the music department found out, which it wasn't no secret, but they found out, and yeah, they wasn't having it, and so they kicked me out. It was my junior year, and I was like, "Ooh, what am I going to do?" Like, I had already just accustomed myself to becoming a opera singer. You know what I mean? I thought I was going to be like Jasmine Sullivan's background vocals. You know what I mean? That I was like, bet, and that's gonna be my thing. But so opera alone was an adjustment. So then on top of that, I was like, what? And my mom was like, you're gonna graduate and you're gonna get that diploma, and you're not gonna let those people stop you. So uh go on across the street and go to the theater department. And I was like, ew, no. But on logistics and survival, it was because um, most of my credits would transfer. And so in a year and a half, no, about a year and a half, um, I graduated in the theater department. And then it was the dean of the school that was like, you should apply for graduate school. And I was like, oh. But I knew I wasn't ready just to, like, you know, go out into the world and like what, my suitcase in New York and be like, I'm here, Broadway. No. So I was like, okay, well, that education would buy me more time. That's how I looked at it. And I had no idea about these programs, and the teachers signed me up, you know, the applications or whatever. And that was the first audition. And I was like, all right, I know what the school was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know oh, I'm applying to one, if not the top school in America for acting. And I think it worked in my favor. That's what I'm saying. Like, you gotta be open. You have to do the work. Don't get me twisted. You have to do the work. And I'm not saying that actors can only be good actors if they go to have formal, grad school training or conservatory training. But you gotta get an education in this if you're really serious about it. If you want to just, be on, say you did it, get a couple of shows here and there, a commercial, whatever, cool. That's totally doable. But if you're serious about this as a craft, like as a lifelong journey, you gotta get some form of training and education. And that can be while being in it, you know what I mean? Or shadowing someone and, developing mentors in the business. Because what I find is there's people out here who you would never believe that I know personally now that would love to mentor people. And you would never think you could ever get a chance. And so you just have to be resilient and brave and willing to get out there and put yourself out there. So it's been interesting. I'll be honest, every time I book a job, I'll be like, for real, God, we still doing this? Because I didn't quote unquote choose it. It chose me. So it's a blessing. It keeps me grounded and humble. I will definitely say that because I know at any moment it could go. It could all go. So it allows me to stay present and to have gratitude.
And then, so while you were doing auditions and waiting for your big break, is there a job you did on the side?
Yeah, see, that's the funny thing. I never saw it as like my big break. I just was like, I just need to be employed and have insurance. You know what I mean? Like, it starts getting that. But I think in a way, again, that's what saves me. You can't go into these auditions being like, this is going to be my big break. Even now, like with my team, when they'll send me things and projects and be like, oh, and now this is going to be and I'll be like, yo, save it. I don't even need to hear it. Like, what's for me is for me. I'm going to do the work irregardless. I'm going to put in more work when I know it's the big one. No. And I think that that's a more even kill way and allows, as the actor, because we go through we have to, it's very strange what we do. We become these other people within like 24 hours until the audition is. Then you have to let it go and be okay with like, no, we're crazy. Like if I get an audition, it's like I'm a doctor. The moment I get that audition, I'm a doctor. You can't tell me otherwise. I'm walking like a doctor, acting like a doctor, to then have the audition and be like, okay, now let it go. And what's meant to be will be. Like, you got to acknowledge that. So the more you can put less stress on yourself, the better, I find. And to truly, you gotta enjoy auditioning. You really have to enjoy it. Because if not, you're gonna burn out. And that's not even like only the strong will survive. It's just reality because there's more rejection than there is yeses. But so with that being said, I was very uh, focused on survival. So in New York, I applied for everything, every single job you can think of. No one will hire me. I would be crying in New York, literally in the streets of New York, because what was one job? The lady wouldn't hire me to be a receptionist at a hair salon because she said I didn't know the programming of like, like at restaurants, they have the certain programs, whatever, to like, I don't know, for seating or how to cash out. I said, ma'am, I have a master's at Yale. I think I can figure out the program. And she was like, no. There was one time I went to a temp agency. Those people laughed in my face and was like, you're going to book. We're not hiring you. And then paraded me around this was actually after I had booked, after I had finished doing Ghost on Broadway. So I was unemployed again. And so I went to a temp agency and they laughed at me and was like, we're not hiring you. No one's going to want to hire you. You're going to book. So they believed something in me that I didn't, you know what I mean? I'm like, I need to pay the phone bill. Like, what are y'all talking about? And they paraded me around the place and was asking for my autograph. I couldn't even believe it. And I was crying Like, please, will you just hire me? But the job I ended up doing um, was nannying. I got really lucky that I nannied for a family in Upper West Side that they were, because I did a couple of interviews. Everybody ain't for everybody. But I got lucky that this family was really cool and they liked that I was into the arts and had that background. And so I would take the kids to plays and all dance recite, all this types of stuff. And it was really cool. I was very blessed to hear other people's stories. I was very, very blessed. And that it afforded me to still be able to audition. But yeah, that was my
Tell me about your character in The Last Shift.
So basically, uh, I play a woman who is the boss of a franchise. Yeah, like a franchise mom and pop, right? Like I guess like if it was like Long John Silver's or something, right? So what's interesting is how the movie is set up. You have an older gentleman who has worked there quite possibly as long as my character's been alive. And so he's finally retiring. And so what's interesting as a Black woman, excuse me, I am his boss. So that's a very interesting dynamic because you dealing with ageism, sexism, and racism. And so in him retiring, I have to find a new replacement. And so who I end up finding is a younger Black guy. And so it's like we walk a tightrope. Basically, you're watching these two guys try to get along and that they're from two completely different worlds. But what makes the common ground is poverty, which is unfortunate, but interesting that they have equal ground and how each deal with it. You know what I mean? Like the younger Black man is quite possibly more, quicker and could adapt or could reinvent his life. This may just be a stop along the way. Where for this older white gentleman, this is all he's known and chosen for himself. Yet he tries to have status, where it's like you're flexing at a fast food joint. And so there's a situation that happens, and I have to figure out who did it. It was one of them who did it, and it's a twist, big twist at the end. But I'm plagued with having to make the decision of what plan of action I'm going to take because a situation has come up and someone has to get fired, and where I can't be biased, right, as to who I think did it. And it's really interesting. I think now more than ever during this time period, is it interesting the world that we're in now and what we're dealing with right now? And with beyond Black Lives Matter and the prevalency of just how real racism is in America today, we're also dealing with COVID is the common denominator, right? So everybody, for the most part, they're not making money. Even if you're working, you're still not making money the way you used to. I would be shocked. I don't think there's that many people who are getting raises and promotions and getting more money. You know what I mean? It's like you're winning if you're employed, just employed. So what's interesting about this, and unfortunate too, with the disease, like I mean not the disease, but the virus sees no color. It don't care what your bank account is. It don't care where you come from. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting to watch the show in which, like, the world that we live in now, you have something which is poverty, which is the grand equalizer, and how people still try to assert themselves in ways of status, and it's uncomfortable, it's humorous, and it's also it tugs at your heart because you can't help but have empathy to people that are actually more similar than they think.
So thank you so much for talking to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you can just close out, how can viewers see this movie?
You can catch Last Shift in theaters.